What did she do to you for you to kill her and then put her in a wall? When he said, "We found your daughter," I just collapsed. I was like, I can't believe this. And I was praying. I said, God, please don't let it be her. Please don't let it be her. And he did not answer my prayer.
Police walked through a cluttered hoarder house, searching for a missing woman, checking rooms and closets before leaving empty-handed. Days later, armed with a search warrant, they returned to find her dismembered body hidden behind a secret wall in a concealed attic, in the exact same house they had already searched. The Six Flags mechanic who confessed to killing Renia Lewis barely knew her, and the mystery of how she ended up in that house of horrors and why he brutally murdered her remains a question that haunts her devastated family and an entire community.
The person that they have in custody is being cooperative, stated that he did indeed kill Renia. He threw her phone on top of the school. That's the most information that I have.
Police now have Renia's phone, which her family says last pinged at this address. Her mother used the Life 360 app to track her final location, and her cousin LaToya helped lead the family's search in the area.
The last weekend of September 2025 in Vallejo, California, began like any other for most residents, but for the Lewis family, it marked the beginning of a nightmare that would expose the darkest capabilities of human violence. Renia Lewis, who went by her full name Renia, was a vibrant 28-year-old woman described by her family as full of life, someone who loved cooking and being with the people she cherished most. She lived in Berkeley, about 25 miles southwest of Vallejo, but frequently made the drive to visit friends and relatives in the city where she had deep roots. Friday night, September 26, 2025, around 9 p.m., Renia was last seen in the area of 14th Street in Vallejo. It was a neighborhood she knew, a place where she felt comfortable visiting. Her mother, Terry Lewis, had messaged her daughter that Friday evening but received no response. At first, Terry wasn't overly concerned. Renia often put her phone on Do Not Disturb mode when she was going to sleep, a common habit in an age of constant connectivity. It was a detail that would later haunt Terry, wondering if those unanswered messages were the last chance to reach her daughter while she was still alive. As Friday night became Saturday, and Saturday stretched into Sunday, the silence from Renia became increasingly alarming. By Sunday, September 28, 2025, after still hearing nothing from her daughter, Terry's concern transformed into genuine fear. Something was wrong. A mother knows. The Lewis family turned to technology that has become both a blessing and a curse in modern missing person cases. Using the Life 360 app, a location-sharing application that many families use to keep track of each other, Terry checked her daughter's last known location. The results sent a chill through her. Renia's phone had last pinged near 14th Street in Vallejo, the same area where she'd last been seen on Friday night. The family didn't hesitate. They immediately filed a missing person report with the Vallejo Police Department that Sunday. Officers responded quickly, immediately entering Renia Lewis into the missing person database. The investigation led them almost immediately to a residence on 14th Street based on the location data from Renia's phone and information that suggested she may have been there before vanishing. What officers found when they arrived at the property would be the first indication of just how challenging this case would become. The house was what law enforcement professionals call a hoarder home, a residence so cluttered with belongings, trash, and accumulated items that normal living becomes nearly impossible. Relatives would later describe it as looking like a junkyard, messy, and cluttered with people coming and going. Neighbors characterized it as almost abandoned at times, a property that stood out even in a working-class neighborhood where not every home was perfectly maintained. According to the official release from Vallejo Police, officers entered the residence to conduct a welfare check. This initial search was what law enforcement calls a cursory examination, a walkthrough of all rooms, closets, and places where a person could hide. But in a hoarder environment, determining what constitutes a thorough search becomes exponentially more difficult. Piles of belongings can hide doorways, conceal closets, and mask the architectural features of a home. Officers searched through what they could see and access, looking for any sign of Renia Lewis. They found nothing. No signs of the missing woman, no obvious evidence of foul play, nothing to suggest that Renia was in that house. But the Lewis family wasn't satisfied with the official search. They couldn't be. When someone you love goes missing, you don't wait passively for authorities to find them. You do everything in your power to bring them home. The family launched their own intensive search effort, retracing Renia's last known steps using every piece of location data they could access. They canvassed the neighborhood, talked to anyone who might have seen her, and searched every inch of the area around 14th Street. Then came a discovery that would transform the investigation from a standard missing person case into something far more sinister. The family found Renia's phone, not dropped on a sidewalk where it might have fallen from her pocket, not left behind in a car where she might have forgotten it, but on a roof. The bizarre location of the phone set off immediate alarm bells. How does a phone end up on a roof? The most logical explanation was that someone had thrown it there, trying to dispose of evidence while making it difficult to find. By Monday, September 29, 2025, with Renia still missing and the discovery of her phone in such an unusual location, the case reached a critical escalation point. Vallejo police requested that the California Highway Patrol issue an Ebony alert for Renia Lewis. This notification system, relatively new to California's missing person response infrastructure, was specifically designed to help locate missing Black youth and women, an acknowledgement of the systemic disparities in how missing person cases are handled and publicized. The Ebony alert went live on Monday, broadcasting Renia's information across California. The alert represented California's attempt to address what activists and journalists have termed missing white woman syndrome, the documented pattern where missing white women receive disproportionate media coverage and public attention compared to missing women of color. The case was also receiving support from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which brought additional resources and expertise to the search. Sergeant Rashad Hollis, serving as the public information officer for the Vallejo Police Department, would later acknowledge the FBI's instrumental role in supporting the investigation. But even as law enforcement agencies coordinated their efforts and the public became aware of Renia's disappearance through the Ebony alert, the young woman remained missing. Her family's worst fears were growing with each passing hour. Then came Tuesday, September 30th, 2025, 4 days after Renia was last seen, 2 days after the initial welfare check. Detectives, armed with new information that hasn't been fully disclosed to the public, obtained a search warrant for the property. This time, the search would be far more thorough than the cursory welfare check conducted on Sunday. This time, investigators knew they weren't just looking for a missing woman. They were likely looking at a crime scene. As detectives methodically worked through the property on Tuesday, they focused particular attention on a detached unit in the backyard. This outbuilding, a shed-like structure that had apparently been converted into some kind of living space, had areas that weren't immediately visible during a standard inspection. During this intensive search, investigators made a discovery that would explain why the initial welfare check had failed to find Renia. They discovered a concealed entry into an attic space. The entrance was hidden, masked by the clutter and chaos of the Hoarder environment, positioned in such a way that it wouldn't be noticed during a walkthrough. When officers carefully accessed this hidden attic area, they found what they had been desperately hoping not to find. The remains of Renia Lewis lay in the concealed space, hidden behind what her cousin, Lewis, would describe as a secret wall they placed her behind. The details of what investigators found in that attic were so horrific that even hardened law enforcement officers were shaken. Family members later revealed to KTVU reporters that Renia had been dismembered, her body hidden in this concealed space in a manner that suggested deliberate, calculated efforts to hide the evidence of a brutal crime. Sergeant Rashad Hollis chose his words carefully when describing what had been found, but the horror was evident. This was a horrific crime. Not only did this bring pain to the family, it brought pain to the community, he told reporters. The repetition of horrific wasn't just emphasis, it was the only word that could capture the brutality of what had been done to Renia Lewis. As detectives processed the crime scene in the attic, other officers were already moving to apprehend the suspect their investigation had identified. The trail led them not to the residence on 14th Street, where Renia's body had been found, but to Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, the popular amusement park in Vallejo. There, working his regular shift maintaining the rides that brought joy to thousands of visitors, was Douglas Irwin Shaw, a 41-year-old mechanic who had apparently been going about his daily routine, even as police searched for Renia's body. Shaw was arrested without incident at his workplace on Tuesday afternoon, just hours after investigators had made their grim discovery in the hidden attic. For his co-workers at Six Flags, the arrest must have been surreal. A familiar face, someone they worked alongside day after day, being led away in handcuffs for murder. Shaw was transported to the Vallejo Police Department for questioning, and what happened in that interrogation room would prove crucial to the case. According to police statements during his interview with detectives, Douglas Shaw confessed. He admitted that he was responsible for Renia Lewis's death, making statements that would become central to the prosecution's case against him. Charging documents reviewed by KTVU would later reveal additional chilling details. According to these documents, Shaw told investigators that he had killed Renia with a knife. The brutality of the method, combined with the dismemberment of her body and the calculated concealment in the hidden attic, painted a picture of violence that went far beyond a momentary loss of control. But even with Shaw's confession, one of the most troubling aspects of the case remained frustratingly unclear: the relationship between the victim and her killer. According to both authorities and the Lewis family, Shaw and Renia were not in a relationship. They may have only recently met, suggesting a brief and ultimately fatal acquaintance. The question that haunted everyone involved was how and why a 28-year-old woman ended up dead in a hidden attic, killed by a man she barely knew. The confusion extended even to basic facts about Shaw's connection to the property where Renia was found. The house on 14th Street, described as boarded up and abandoned looking by neighbors, wasn't Shaw's official residence. Home records reviewed by KTVU revealed that Shaw's address was actually on Pomona Avenue in Vallejo, within walking distance of the 14th Street property, but not the same location. Some reports suggested Shaw may have been living in the outbuilding behind the 14th Street house, but this remained unclear. As investigators dug deeper into Shaw's background, troubling patterns emerged. A former girlfriend of Shaw came forward to speak with KTVU reporters, revealing that she had obtained a restraining order against him in 2023, just 2 years before Renia's murder. The woman, who had met Shaw when they both worked at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, described concerning behaviors that had ultimately led her to seek legal protection. Both the ex-girlfriend and her father characterized Shaw as a narcissist, someone who believed everyone else was wrong and who could not accept criticism or alternative viewpoints. While the specific circumstances that led to the restraining order weren't detailed in public reports, the fact that legal intervention had been necessary painted a picture of a man whose behavior had raised serious red flags before. Douglas Irwin Shaw was booked into Solano County Jail on Tuesday, September 30th, 2025, on suspicion of murder. He was held without bail, a reflection of both the severity of the charges and the flight risk he posed. Shaw had 2 daughters, adding another layer of tragedy to an already devastating case. A man who was a father himself had allegedly committed an act of violence so brutal that it defied comprehension. For the Lewis family, Shaw's arrest answered some questions while leaving others painfully unresolved. Renia's mother, Terry Lewis, had been among those waiting near the scene when detectives emerged with the confirmation that the body was indeed her daughter. Terry later recalled the drive from Stockton to Vallejo on that terrible Tuesday. On our way from Stockton, I was praying. I just prayed, God, please don't let it be her. Please don't let it be, she told KTVU through tears. And he didn't answer my prayer. Terry collapsed when detectives confirmed it was Renia. The physical and emotional toll of learning that your daughter has been murdered, dismembered, and hidden in an attic is almost incomprehensible. In the days that followed, Terry struggled to process her grief while also grappling with the complex questions surrounding her daughter's death. This is unreal, so unreal. I will never see my daughter again because of this monster, she said. She was a grown woman. What choices she made was on her. I still love her. Renia's cousin, Latoya Lewis, spoke to reporters about the family's anguish. I'm hurt. You would never thought you would be out posting flyers and it would be your own family member, Latoya said. My stomach was in knots. The family had been so active in the search, so determined to find Renia, never truly believing that their efforts would end in such tragedy. Another cousin, Jake Green, shared the family's belief about what must have happened to Renia. Speaking to ABC7, he stated that the family believed Renia was brought to the house against her will. If she was to see the condition of the house, she is not coming in willingly. She is not going to do that, he explained. So I feel like she was either drugged or under some type of influence. The state of the Hoarder house made it inconceivable to those who knew Renia that she would have willingly entered such a space. The Lewis family remembered Renia as someone who was family-oriented, someone who loved being surrounded by the people she cared about. She enjoyed cooking, sharing meals, creating those moments of connection that make life meaningful. Her upcoming 29th birthday, which should have been a celebration, instead became a marker of a future that would never be realized. The community's response to Renia's death was immediate and heartfelt. A memorial sprang up outside the residence on 14th Street, near the corner of Star Avenue and Campbell Avenue. Neighbors who had never met Renia, strangers who only knew her story from news reports, brought flowers, candles, and written tributes. The memorial became a physical manifestation of collective grief. Brooke Hayes, a resident who stopped by to pay respects, was struck by the family's dedication. It's really sad to know that she has family and friends who really came, like they really loved that girl enough to do the footwork on their own to try to find out where she was, she told reporters. Colleen Isom Reyes, a lifelong Vallejo resident, articulated what many in the community felt. It's the proper thing to do, she explained, especially if you're from Vallejo, whether you knew the person or not. We're all human. Police Chief Jason Taw addressed the department's response to the case in an official statement. This was a heartbreaking, senseless act of violence that has no place in our community, Taw said. I am proud of our officers and detectives for making an arrest and solving this case. Above all, our thoughts are with the decedent's family during this incredibly difficult time. The case represented Vallejo's 14th homicide of 2025, a grim statistic that highlighted the ongoing struggle with violence in the city. For a mid-sized California city, 14 homicides by the end of September represented a troubling rate of violent crime. Each of those 14 victims had been someone's loved one, leaving behind grieving relatives and traumatized communities. The challenges of searching hoarder homes became a focal point of analysis in the case. Law enforcement experts explained that hoarder residences present some of the most difficult search environments imaginable. The sheer volume of accumulated items can hide doorways, conceal architectural features, and make it nearly impossible to conduct a thorough search without literally removing everything from the property. Chief Deputy Alex Payne of Bullitt County Sheriff's Office, speaking about similar cases, described the difficulty of searching such environments, noting that the worst possible environment you could ever be searching in is a hoarder home filled with refuse. The fact that Renia's body had been in that attic while police conducted their initial search on Sunday was particularly haunting. Had she still been alive during that first search? The timeline made it unlikely. She had been missing since Friday night, and the condition of the remains suggested she had been dead for days. But the possibility troubled the investigators involved. Even the smell of a decomposing body could be somewhat masked in a hoarder environment where garbage and rotting items create their own overwhelming odors. On Thursday, October 2, 2025, Douglas Irwin Shaw was arraigned in court for the first time since his arrest. The Solano County District Attorney's Office had formally charged him with murder, and Shaw appeared before a judge to hear the charges against him. During this initial court appearance, Shaw did not enter a plea. He was ordered to return to Department 1 at 9 a.m. on October 9, 2025, at the Justice Center in Fairfield for further proceedings. The confession Shaw had made to police would be central to the prosecution's case. While defense attorneys would scrutinize every aspect of how that confession was obtained, the admission provided investigators with a powerful piece of evidence. Combined with the forensic evidence from the crime scene, testimony from investigators, and documentation of Shaw's connection to the property, prosecutors appeared to have a strong case. For the Lewis family, each court appearance would mean reliving their trauma, sitting in a courtroom while the details of Renia's death were discussed in clinical, legal terms. Terry Lewis had expressed to reporters her wish that Shaw receive life in prison, that he sit there and suffer for taking her daughter's life. He needs to get life so he can sit there and suffer, she said, her words carrying the weight of a mother's grief and rage. The Vallejo Police Department continued to seek additional information from the public, recognizing that witnesses or community members might have seen something relevant to the case. Detectives Zach Horton and William Carpenter were named as lead investigators, and the department set up multiple ways for tips to be submitted, including an anonymous tip line at 1-800-488-9383. The case highlighted systemic issues in how missing person cases are handled, particularly cases involving women of color. The Ebony alert system, while well-intentioned, came too late to help Renia. She was already dead by the time the alert went out on Monday. Black women and girls who go missing often don't receive the same immediate, intensive response as missing white women, a disparity that has real consequences in terms of investigation, speed, media attention, and public awareness. The phone's discovery on the roof remained one of the more intriguing details of the case. How did it get there, and what did its location reveal about what happened? Investigators likely analyzed the phone extensively, looking at its last known movements, any messages or social media activity the hours before Renia's death, and any connections between her phone records and Shaw. The phone's location suggested someone had thrown it there, trying to dispose of evidence while making it difficult to find. As the legal case against Douglas Shaw progressed through the fall of 2025, questions lingered about what could have been done to prevent Renia's death. The restraining order that Shaw's ex-girlfriend had obtained in 2023 documented a history of concerning behavior, but restraining orders can't prevent violence. They can only establish legal consequences for violations. The reality is that predicting who will commit violence remains one of the most challenging problems in public safety. For Vallejo residents, particularly those in the neighborhood around 14th Street, the case shattered the sense of safety that people take for granted. The knowledge that a woman's dismembered body had been hidden in a nearby structure for days, that such violence had occurred in their community, created lasting trauma. The house itself, forever marked by the violence that occurred within it, stood as a grim reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. As 2025 continued, Renia Lewis' story remained in the forefront of Vallejo's collective consciousness. The combination of elements, a missing woman, a hoarder house that concealed her body, a confession from a killer who barely knew his victim, and a family's determined search, created a narrative that captured public attention while highlighting serious issues in how society protects vulnerable individuals. The memorial outside the residence on 14th Street would eventually be cleared away. The flowers would fade, but the memory of what happened there would linger. For those who passed by and knew what had happened, it was impossible to look at that property the same way again. Renia Lewis had been 28 years old, on the cusp of celebrating her 29th birthday, with decades of life that should have stretched out before her. She had been someone's daughter, someone's cousin, someone who meant enough to her loved ones that they refused to give up searching for her even when initial police searches turned up nothing. That determination, that refusal to accept her disappearance, had ultimately led to the discovery of her body and the arrest of her accused killer. For the detectives who worked the case, the successful arrest and confession represented solid police work under challenging circumstances. They had connected Shaw to Renia's death within hours of discovering her body, obtained his confession, and built what appeared to be a strong case for prosecution. But they also had to live with the knowledge that Renia's body had been in that attic, while officers conducted the initial welfare check. The story of Renia Lewis is ultimately a story about the fragility of life, about how quickly ordinary circumstances can turn fatal, about the danger that can lurk behind familiar faces. Douglas Shaw had been someone's co-worker, someone's ex-boyfriend, someone's father. He had shown up for work, fixed rides, gone through the motions of normal life. And yet, if the allegations and his reported confession are true, he was also capable of brutal violence. As this story continues to unfold in courtrooms and in the hearts of those who loved Renia Lewis, it serves as a sobering reminder of the work that remains to be done in protecting the vulnerable, in creating systems that respond effectively when people go missing, and in holding accountable those who commit violence. Renia Lewis deserved better. She deserved to celebrate her 29th birthday, to live out her life making her own choices, to grow old, surrounded by family who loved her. Instead, she became another name in the grim statistics of violence against women, another family shattered by loss, another case file in a police department already overwhelmed by homicides. Her story, tragic as it is, must be told and remembered, not just as a crime story, but as a human story about a life cut short and a family forever changed by violence. The case remains active as Douglas Irwin Shaw works his way through the criminal justice system, with the full truth of what happened in that residence on 14th Street yet to be revealed in court. But what is already known paints a picture of a young woman who encountered violence in its most brutal form and a family that refused to stop searching until they found her.